issues that I may have with it. Candidates Night is sponsored by the Tufton Borough Association, and we've been doing it for most of the 60 years or so that we've been an organization. We do have some pamphlets out there and some recent issues of the Tufton Borough Times, if you didn't get one in the mail. I imagine most everybody did, but if you wanted an extra one, please help yourself. We do have, or we did invite 12 candidates tonight, and of them, 6 of them are competing for seats, and then the other 6 are in uncontested seats. And one of the invitees was from the school board, Jack. I see that you're here. Thank you very much. Tonight's moderator, a change from the last minute, is going to be Steve Prisner. It was expected, and I had thought it would be Dan Bernard until Friday, when Dan told me that he was undergoing surgery today for some orthoscopic ligament or repairing some problems with his knee. So I have not heard how he's made out, but that usually goes pretty smooth. Suffice to say, he will not be here. So when I talked to Dan on Friday night or Saturday morning, and it was Friday night, I said, Dan, what am I going to do? I need a moderator. And he said, don't worry about it. I've got somebody else. They're all lined up. And I said, great. Tell me who it is. I'll give him a call. And his reply was, well, you shouldn't do that yet because I haven't told him about this. But he said, don't worry, I will tell him on Saturday morning because I will see him then. And it is Steve Prisner. And I thought, that's great, as long as you know that he'll be doing it. And he said, yes, I imagine he will be volunteering for it. And Steve did. So I am very thankful. I'll mention that tonight's Candidates Night is not intended to be a debate. It is intended to be an opportunity to meet and ask questions of the candidates. But even though we're in a cafeteria, there should be no food fight, either between the candidates or from the gallery to the candidates. And Steve will, we've talked this over. We do expect that for contested seats, there's bound to be differences of opinion. And so there will be some sort of give and take between the two. That's to be expected. But it is primarily meant for you to ask questions of the candidates and then hear what their responses are. We're not going to spend too much time with candidate to candidate back and forth because we could probably be here all night for that reason. The contested seats, there are 2 budget committee seats open and there are 4 candidates running. One of them, Barry Ennis, is unable to attend tonight as he's on travel. He was thinking somebody may be here on his behalf, but I have not heard from him, so I'll ask now, is someone here to talk for Barry? Or any questions? I see none. So that'll be 3 candidates up here. And then for selectmen, there are 2 candidates, and I know both are here tonight. Without further ado then, I'll introduce Steve Prisner as moderator, and I'll let him take over the floor. And thank you again for coming. I do ask that you please place your cell phones in silent mode or turn them off. We are having some recordings tonight, and my understanding is we will have these on YouTube within about 48 hours, or the recordings will be available, and we will post the link on the Tufton Borough Association's Facebook page. So if anybody wants to pass that on, I'd appreciate that. Otherwise, Steve?
Not sure I'm a certified operator for this. Thanks, Mark. Thanks to the Tufton Borough Association for once again sponsoring Candidates Night. Before we begin tonight's program, I ask that you join with me in our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
My plan for this evening is to recognize those individuals who are in uncontested races and allow them to briefly introduce themselves. But I want to minimize the questions for them since they are already running unopposed. I will then introduce each person running for the 2 open positions for Budget Committee. Their order of appearance has been established by drawing numbers out of a hat. Each is invited to share their background, why they are running, and their philosophy on spending our money. I will open the floor to your questions after all 4 candidates have spoken. Finally, I will introduce the 2 candidates for selectmen. Their order was also determined by drawing. Each is invited to share their background, why they are running, their vision for our town, and their philosophy on spending our money. After both of them have spoken, I will open the floor for your questions. While we're on the topic of questions, to maintain order, I ask that no one speak unless I have recognized them. All questions and comments should be directed to me. Speakers should provide their name and area of town. For example, Linda Brinzer, Melvin Village. Please be courteous and speak to the issues, not the individuals. I will repeat each question so that all may hear and so we may capture the entire question for our video recording. I will then direct the question to the appropriate candidate. This forum is intended to provide you with information on the candidates and their views. It is not the debate. We'll follow the format of the question asked, question answered. Thank you for your cooperation. So without further ado, let me briefly acknowledge those people who are unopposed and basically already elected. So, I'll take the liberty of starting with moderator. Dan regrets that he cannot be here this evening, and he is running unopposed, and he would also appreciate your vote for the coming election. I have here, I don't know this gentleman, trustee of the trust funds, David Braun.
That was your name? I'm anxious to participate in Tuftonboro.
Thank you. Susie? You just,
Susan Weeks, cemetery trustee, hoping to continue with the big projects we've started and make some more improvements to our cemeteries.
library trustee, Gordon?
Good evening, my name is Gordon Hunt, and I'm running for this would be my 3rd term as a library trustee. Really enjoy the work, looking forward to hopefully bringing the culmination of projects we've been working on for a long time, and I appreciate your vote and appreciate your support. Thank you.
Jack Whitmer for the school board.
Hi, Jeff Weaver. I'm running for 3 more years as your school board representative from Tuftonboro. I've been on the board since 1993, and I've been chairman of the budget committee and the human resources for the last 15 or 18 years, something like that. Biggest challenges right now for the school board are handling what the state is no longer giving us. The state has continued to take money away from the school districts, which unfortunately comes out of your pocket. One of the areas of concern is the retirement fund. The state, when the retirement fund was first set up, paid 35% of the total. Now they pay 0. And that's happened over the last 7 or 8 years. There was a bill out there to add 15% from the state this year, but that was rejected by the legislature. So we're battling that, providing the best education we can for the kids, but still keeping the taxpayers in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, could I ask the 3 candidates that are here for the budget committee to please come forward? Have a seat. And again, by the luck of the draw, actually Chris winds up being the first speaker. So with without further ado,
All right.
would you like the mic?
No. I have a big one. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chris Sawyer. I'm running for a budget committee. A little bit about me. I'm an accountant. I have an accounting background. Do lots of taxes. I do a lot of financial statements, so I'm pretty intricately well versed with numbers. I'm running for budget committee this year because I think we need to sharpen our pencils as a town and as a committee. I don't know as if there's been enough of that in recent years. Just a quick calculation I'm going to throw out to everybody. I'm not going to talk very long. I did the numbers from 2013 to 2016. Each year, our budget has gone up between 8 and 8.5%. The average increase in salary and or benefits for people in 13 was 2.8%, and in 2015 was 3%. So it's kind of a disparity, and I'm trying to put this into very simple terms. So I think that our budget needs to be looked at. I think the budgets for each individual department need to be properly vetted out. And I would appreciate your vote because I think I could do a good job by doing that vetting along with other members of the budget committee. And one last thing I want to throw out to you is that running a town really has only 3 components, as one wise person told me. It has a budget, and then the way we get the money for the budget is 2 other components. It's either by raising taxes or adjusting assessments. So when we need more money, we either have to raise our taxes or we raise the assessments. And the same thing is, if we have a lower budget, our taxes go down and our assessments go down. And we've been tapping into our undesignated fund balance, which that will run out eventually. And it's gonna come sooner than later. And then what happens? So those are just a few points I wanted to bring up. And like I said, I would appreciate your vote.
Thank you, Chris. Next speaker is Tom Young, please.
Hi, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, and I do see some familiar faces, my name is Tom Young. If I sound a little strange, I'm getting over bronchitis. If I cough once or twice, I'm getting over bronchitis. I'm told it's not contagious at this point. And I am a candidate for the Tufton Borough Budget Committee. I've lived in town for 37 years, for the first 5 or 6 in Melvin Village, and since then in Tufton Borough Four Corners. I'd like to give you a little bit of a brief background around myself, since there are people who don't know me. I'm 69 years old. I went to public high school and college, got a bachelor's of science degree in mechanical engineering, a master's degree in ocean engineering, but I also spent some time in some accounting courses, mostly because I like them. They came in handy later on, as you'll see, because I did something different than engineering for most of my career. I worked for 10 years as an engineer, and a lot of that was in the Navy nuclear program in the reactor compartments of the submarines in Broad, Connecticut. I had hair back then. But in 1981, I got the chance to live my life's dream, to be in business for myself, which is what I felt I was meant to do and what I always wanted to do. And my wife and I purchased Melvin Village Marina in the small town of Tufton Borough. For over 3 decades of long days and longer weeks, in good economies and bad, we built Melvin Village Marina into a successful business. Then, with luck again, for me, my son Matthew, who joined the company full-time after college in 2001, so about 16 years ago, 17 years ago almost, took over more and more of the responsibilities to the point where about 3 years ago, he became the full-time owner and operator, and I just worked part-time. This was my life's work. This is basically what I did with my adult life. To do it, I learned balance sheets and financial statements. I dealt with banks, I dealt with insurers and more. And I still do that part-time today because I work about 10 or 12 hours a week and help Matt out with some of the stuff that I don't mind doing and he particularly doesn't like doing. As an offshoot, I should also point out that I served 17 years as a director of a small bank in Portsmouth called First Signature Bank. It was an unusual bank. It had no tellers. It was owned by completely by John Hancock Life Insurance, who used it for processing. And I learned a lot there, but it was sold in 2006. And the new owners wanted their own directors, so I lost my job and I needed a part-time job. I believe that small towns can function well only when the citizens give up their time and their energy to serve on committees like the Budget Committee or many of the other committees. Without that, the town couldn't function. For years, my excuse for not doing that was, I don't have any time. Well, it doesn't work anymore. For 37 years, I've lived in Tuftonboro and in New Hampshire because I love it here. And I now have the time, and it's time to give some of it back. That's what I'd like to do. In running for a position on the Budget Committee, I do not bring a mandate for sweeping change. Because I believe that Tuftonboro is a pretty well-run town as it is now. Perfect? No. But it's pretty well-run, things function, schools are good, taxes are low, many towns in the state would kill for our tax rate, and the different departments perform their functions and get their jobs done. So if elected, you can count on me to work with the other Budget Committee members to constructively do the best job we can do for the town. I'm a pretty conservative guy when it comes to spending money. But I recognize that things change with time, and when I'm convinced it's necessary, I will support funding the needed changes, even as I try to keep the cost down for those changes. Let me use the Tuftonboro Fire Department as an example. I've always felt that the Tuftonboro Fire Department, the town of Tuftonboro, has a far better fire department than any town of its size deserves. It's not that we don't deserve it, but it's just a better fire department than we would all expect to see. And that's because it has superior leadership, which attracts good volunteers with up-to-date training. But equally important with that is the town has provided funding when the fire department needed equipment, or engines, or buildings, and the town has done its part for the fire department. And that has worked well to everyone's advantage, and that's the way I would approach membership on the Budget Committee. In summary, my son, Matthew Young, who serves on the planning board in town, jokes that I live in what he calls my carry-out house. And his definition of that is, in other words, the house that I hope to live in for the rest of my life until they carry me out of it. He's probably right, barring something unforeseen. And that house is in Tuftonboro, and I'm going to stay there. And I ask for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. The next speaker for the Budget Committee is Helen Hartford, and Helen is the incumbent running for re-election.
I'm Helen Hartshorn, for those of you who don't know me, and I am running for a re-election on the Budget Committee. This would be my second term. I've worked to do the best I can to balance the spending that we have for the town, so that the tax rate stays as low as possible, and yet we're funding the services that we all expect the town to pay for. When I joined the Budget Committee, I did put together a couple of graphs that helped me to understand better the town's spending by department and by expense type and over the last period of years. And I guess they were really liked because they've been in the annual report for the town for the last couple of years. So I feel that I did make a contribution in that area. I've also served on the Capital Improvements Project Committee for the last 5 years. And in 2014, I was a member of the Tufton Borough Library Advisory Committee. As for my background, after receiving an undergraduate degree in literature from Scripps College, which is a small women's liberal arts school in California, I received an MBA in finance from UCLA. And my career was in public accounting and corporate finance. I would be pleased to represent you for another 3 years on the Budget Committee, and I ask for your vote on the March 13th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen. Open the floor to questions. Does anybody have any questions for any of the Budget Committee candidates?
I was just curious about the statement that our assessments go up and down. Since we've been here, ours haven't gone down.
Question is,
Regularly.
question is,
And have people experienced the assessments going down?
I personally haven't, okay, so the question is, you'd like some greater explanation about the
Yes,
comments
because the
on
statement
assessments.
was made by you,
Yeah.
that the assessments go.
In
Chris?
some towns, they do go down. It depends on the budgeting. And there are two ways by which you can either raise, or great, if it's lower, but assessments do go down, and some towns do experience that. It's just,
Have they done it here in the past several years?
I was just planning out for you the three components to, we have a budget, and the two components to fund that budget are either via assessing or property tax.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Yes, Tyler.
Helen is a former budget committee member. You've been there and serving for I believe one term or perhaps two. What changes would you like to see? What, given your background and your experience and so forth, what kinds of things would you like to see the budget committee do perhaps better than it has been?
I think that we can always improve balancing the needs of the town with the taxes that we charge. And I would like to see us work harder to make the tax rate as low as possible. But it's always a challenge. I do find that the town is very well run. When we are presented a budget by a department, it's always built from the bottom up. So it's not as though they just say, this is what we got last year, this is what we want next year. It's always, these are the salaries that we have to pay. We need a new fax machine, or we need a new typewriter or computer. It's, so I do think that I would like to work as closely as possible to make sure that those budgets are always as well thought out as they are.
Yes, Molly.
I have a question for all three of you. Would each of you take a no new taxes pledge? Given that the state may increase taxes, we understand, but if the state increases our taxes, will you compensate so that our taxes do not increase? A hard pledge?
I'd be willing to answer that first. No.
Say it again?
I'd be willing to answer that first, unless you have an order in mind. No, I would not be willing to do that. I'd love to do it. I don't believe it's possible to promise that.
I agree with Tom. It would be very nice to be able to do that, but I don't think that that is realistic, and I would not take that kind of pledge.
Clarify, no new taxes or no increase in taxes?
No, I'm sorry, no increase. Could you pledge for a stable tax rate, say for 1 year, until our next election?
I'm not sure if the budget committee can we don't set the tax
I know
rate.
you don't set that, but
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I should ask Steve, but if I understand things correctly, the budget committee proposes, so in your proposal, if you would pledge to not propose an increased budget level.
It is the budget committee's budget that's presented to the town and town meetings.
Right.
I understand your question with respect to the budget amount. The tax rate is not set by the budget committee, however. But if theoretically, if you're keeping a stable, if the budget isn't increasing, all other things equal, then your tax rate wouldn't increase. But
I guess
there's
my
only one
question
that's
is about
multiple.
increasing spending. And what I'm hearing from at least a couple of the candidates is a willingness to increase spending. And so I was asking if you would make a pledge to not increase spending. I don't know how to phrase it in terms of, but that's my bottom line. Does that make sense?
Okay, now that's a different question.
I'm not a financial
Simply a matter of, I'm gonna say, how do you view, are you willing to commit to not increasing spending? Let's put it that way.
First, I'd like to go back, I'm going to answer that question, but it's been a while, Lee, but I seem to remember some years where we had tax valuations redone, that the actual taxes that I paid on the same house did go down because the valuations of other houses in town went up. So even though the town spent more money, the amount that some people paid went down.
Some went down, some went up.
Yes, yes, and it depended on how your valuation came out. Like Helen, this was my first year, and I came on a little late, but I served on the CIP committee. And the function of that committee is to anticipate the town's capital spending needs for upcoming years, for 10 years in the future. And there's a nice little graph that they use, correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Helen, that attempts to estimate what the town's capital spending tolerance is. And based on that, this is not a committee that is there to say no. It's a committee that's there to look at what the different departments need. When does the fire department need a new fire engine? How much is it estimated to cost? What repaving do we have to do at the transfer facility? Things like that. And to allocate them into different years so you don't have wild spending swings. But the general trend of that is up. And your memory may be better than mine, Helen, maybe about 3% a year. That's right. Yeah.
I know that a couple of years ago, we did talk on the budget committee, you were on the committee then, and so was Tyler, about keeping the spending flat. And it just didn't work because with inflation, with salary increases, then there was also the salary consultation that was done. It just didn't work to keep the expenses flat. And I just don't think that's a realistic approach to it.
Chris, do you have anything to add?
I'm not gonna commit to anything other than, I think that whoever you choose, there's 4 of us, Barry's not here tonight. You know, my philosophy is to really look at the spending. Like I said, these have been increasing each year by 8%, not overall 8%. Every single year between 8 and 9%, our budget continues to go up. And I know there's expenditures, I get that. You know, it happens in real life. We all have a budget that we need to stay to. I just think that we need to, and the whole budget committee, you know, it's not gonna be one person because one person doesn't change. If there's, 7 people on a board, it's gotta be a majority. But I think what needs to happen is we really need to look at every single segment of the budget and make sure that we are spending appropriately and within our means. If I get elected, that would be my goal. Like I said, I would be one out of several people. But like I said, that's what really should happen on any level, on any board. When I was on the planning board, you know, we had to look at our budget. I didn't realize that the money that wasn't spent, you know, went someplace else and didn't go exactly where I thought it would. I didn't know that, and I was on the planning board for a really long time. So sometimes, you know, even though you see these people that are involved in the town, not always do we have all the facts. Not always do we know exactly where every dime goes, and every dime of our own particular department budget. You know, people should be asking questions, and that's the reason, one of the reasons why I want to be on here, because I really want to see where it goes, you know, and get more educated. It'd be great for me. Then I can talk to people and I'll know.
Chris, you'll be happy to know that the budget increase for next year is 4%, not 8%.
We don't know if that yet, hasn't been passed.
That's what's proposed, so unless somebody adds to it, it'll be 4% over last year.
Highland?
I would just like to help the questioner. I think the question properly should be, are you committed to controlling those costs that are controllable? We get more and more costs pushed at us from Concord. Those are not controllable costs. They will increase the budget. But I think perhaps what I'm reading into the question is, would you be agreeable to keeping a cap on controllable costs? There are costs that we can control. There are costs that can be paid out over a period of time. There are different ways of handling that. But there are costs also that come at us, both from the federal government and also from Congress, that are not controllable. And those are, so it's unfair for anybody to say that they will keep everything flat. It's not possible.
Thank you.
Do any of you have any comments?
I would absolutely be willing. Actually, I think all three of us said that we would be absolutely willing to work for that. That, you know, we want to start looking at the baseline and build the costs up from the bottom, not just say this is our budget last year, let's add 4% or anything like that. But on the costs that are controllable, absolutely. And I don't think anybody else here is going to disagree with me on that.
What are the controllable costs? Sorry.
I'm going to defer to the existing budget committee.
I think that that's just too broad a question.
Can you, sorry,
Go ahead.
can you name an area in which we do have controllable costs that you would be willing to make an effort to keep them level? I'm not familiar with the ins and outs of the budget.
Well, I've always worked to keep things as reasonable as possible, and that's about all I can pledge to.
Okay. Any other questions?